It's the Criterion. It's the Criterion. Criterion. N.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Criterion Project, and Merry Christmas. We're really excited to be back to be talking about a Christmas film. And I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and my friend Conrado is here.
Yes, he is.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. This is our official Christmas episode, I guess.
Yes.
Which is not unusual for you. You're the Christmas queen, right?
I think I have earned that title. Christmas movie queen, at least.
Yeah, definitely.
I will this weekend. I will go over the 100 Christmas movie mark for this year. I've
Very
watched.
good.
So
Wow, 100.
new.
That new Christmas movie, but that's not just Hallmark, is it?
No, not just Hallmark. Hallmark has they just got rid of their New Year's movie for some reason. I have no idea why. So they're doing 39 movies, but just between Hallmark and Lifetime channels, there's almost 70. And then you have
Wow.
feature films, and then there's Up Channel, Ion Channel, Freeform, there's video on demand. there's a lot. It's a lot. But it's kind of fun. I'm a completionist as far as a human, and so I kind of like seeing all of them. First of all, because you find ones that end up surprising you that you never would have found, and you can, I don't know, it's just interesting to see like how the exact same formula can work and then not work, and why, when they're so similar, but just chemistry and writing and so many different things kind of make it work or not work. And I don't know, it's a lot of fun. Plus I've gotten to do really cool interviews, and then different podcast guests, and all of those things kind of add to the whole experience of the different films. And so it's pretty fun. I really enjoy it. And I have a very high threshold for repetition. For some reason, I don't get sick of things the way other people do. And so it's kind of a perfect spot for me as far as the film world, I feel like. So
That's great. Yeah. For those who don't know, although I'm not sure how you would be listening to this podcast if you didn't, but Rachel does have her own podcast reviewing Hallmark Christmas movies.
Yes. So if you're looking for the other end of the small independent cinema,
the other end of the pretentious scale,
yeah, then you can check out the Hallmarkies podcast. But we really do have a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing that. And so, yeah, today we are talking about the classic holidays film, The Shop Around the Corner. And this wasn't our original plan. We talked about it last. We always talk about what we're going to be talking about next. Our original plan was to talk about Meet Me in St. Louis, which I love. And for some reason they got rid of it before Christmas on Criterion.
Very mysterious, because last time we checked, it didn't say that it was leaving the channel.
Yeah.
So, and then just all of a sudden, when I wanted to see it, I couldn't find it, and we had to change gears. Yeah. So if anyone knows about this mystery disappearance of Meet Me in St. Louis, you gotta let us know what happened.
Yeah, because they didn't get rid of the rest of the MGM classics. They still have Easter Parade is still on there, most of the other ones, and so that was very weird.
Yeah, that's right. My guess is they usually have a section called leaving on last day of the month, right? Leaving November 30th, leaving December 31st. And my guess is that Meet Me in St. Louis expired not at the end of November, but maybe like on December 15th or something. and that's why it wasn't announced that it was going to leave, which I think is a bit of a frustrating
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, you think they'd at least give us until Christmas, since it is a Christmas movie. And
Yeah.
the
Well,
whole
or just in general, to not know when a movie's leaving the channel is a little, I
Mhm.
think, in terms of like the larger Criterion
Agreed.
channel as a thing.
I agree. And I don't know. I just feel like their Christmas lineup is woefully lacking. There's only a couple movies that are holiday films, and you would think if you're trying to make a streaming service that people will want to watch, that and they're so theme oriented, that you'd want to have a a Christmas section for December. That
Yeah, well, they can all be Hallmark, I guess.
I know, but come
So people have to recognize they have cornered the game in terms of Christmas
because like
program.
TCM has had a fun lineup this. I haven't been able to watch very much because I'm too busy watching Christmas Hallmark Christmas movies, but they've had a pretty robust lineup, and it would have been nice if
Mhm.
the Criterion Channel. So next year they should do
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a matter of thinking that, I don't know, thinking of what their audience usually watches, or maybe how long the shelf life of a holiday section is. Maybe it's a couple months, but if they want
Hmm.
to, you know,
Yeah.
licensing and things like that, I
Hmm.
wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. But yeah, so we're talking about the shop around the corner. And so this film came out in 1940, and it was based on a play called Parfumerie by Mikios Lazio.
Hey,
Uh,
we're getting off to a great start.
I know, sorry. Um, and this story has been done a bunch of times, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But I wanted to address it in talking about what else we've watched on the Criterion Channel, and because I went ahead and watched in the good old summertime, which is another version of this story with Judy Garland. It was one of the last movies that she made for MGM, so it was and it's not the greatest movie I've seen in my
Hmm.
life. She doesn't sing enough, but there's one particular number that you just see her shine in. It's a combined number of the barbershop chord and I don't care, and you just see that spark that Judy had. But uh the the rest of the cast is pretty bland, and it there's not enough songs, I don't think, especially when you have someone like Judy Garland. You should have more songs, and it but I liked it fine. It's interesting because in in these versions, every version has a similar scene. Like they all have the coffee shop scene, where they are showing up to meet each other,
Mhm.
and some other similar scenes. I think this one is heard a lot by Van Johnson as the lead, who he is really fun, I think, in Brigadoon as Gene Kelly's kind of drunk kind of friend who's kind of sarcastic, and but he's just not a leading
Mm.
man,
Wow.
and so it didn't really work. But I love Judy Garland, so anytime I get to hear her sing, that's a big win for me. And so it was not the best, but it was okay.
All right. Well, you can win them all.
Yeah. Have you been able to watch anything?
Um, yes and no. I've watched a couple of things, but what I want to give attention to is a movie that we have talked about before over at your other podcast, Rachel's Reviews, when we were
Hmm.
doing the best of 2009. So that was earlier this year. And it's a movie called Everyone Else. by German director Maren Ade, and it's this sort of I guess relationship drama about this 30-something German couple who's in a vacation in Italy, and it's got a very sort of before trilogy vibe to it. It's just two people kind of hanging out in a house and then just going about like their relationship. Very well done, very beautifully acted, and very, I think, um, I guess, precise about the kinds of things that develop in a relationship, the kind of, uh, thoughts and insecurities and that sort of thing. So I would really recommend it to anyone who feels like they're interested in that kind of thing.
Cool.
To everyone else.
Everyone else. All right, great. So this play, Parfumerie, has been made into 3 different movies. There's The Shop Around the Corner, was of course the first in 1940, and then there's In the Good Old Summertime in 1949, and then You've Got Mail, which in that same, well, in the 1999 episode of that podcast that we talked about, I mentioned as my favorite because I love it and I think it's so funny. And so it's an interesting. It's always interesting. There's also the Broadway musical called She Loves Me, which was made in the 60s, I believe, and then there were 2 revivals, including one with Shazam himself, Zachary Levi.
Oh no. Your
Trauma.
adversary. Yeah.
It's an interesting thing how it kind of evolves, and it's one of those enemies to lovers trope of romantic comedies, stories, and it seems to be one that's fairly relevant and attractive to people again and again.
Yeah, there seems to be also, according to Wikipedia, a Indian version called The Castle of Love from 1996. So that seems interesting too. And it's
that
also
is
a
interesting
musical because, it's kind of I don't think it's technically a Bollywood movie, but it looks like it has that sort of style to it.
Cool. So what was your, I guess, hot take on the movie, your overall thoughts?
My hot take on the movie The Shop Around the Corner from 1940 is that I kind of loved this movie.
Yes.
I didn't know exactly what to. I have to say I was a little disappointed when we couldn't find Meet Me in St. Louis because I was so excited to see that, and I had a lot of things planned to talk about Judy Garland and musicals and Christmas and whatever. But this movie is so good. I was so delighted by it. Yeah, and it's directed by Ernst Lubitsch, who famously is one of those like classic Hollywood directors that's kind of revered by a lot of historians and people who are into movies, and by other directors at the time as well. Um, have you heard of the famous Lubitsch touch that a lot of people talk about?
Is that they're all set in Budapest?
No, it's just that I think it's just the idea that he had this like special thing that people couldn't quite. There's a lot of interviews about people talking about what this Lubitsch touch is that made his movie so good and so like. I think it's. I honestly still kind of totally define it, but I saw a video of Billy Wilder trying to define it. That's really interesting. That's on YouTube.
Oh, interesting.
And he was one of his biggest fans. I feel like he says in some interview that always when he was making a movie and didn't know what to do, he would always ask himself, what would Lubitsch do? So he is, I think it's just this idea of like knowing this sort of how to best portray a situation in a movie. And I think this is so elegantly done, so well, everything is so well staged that I feel like I could sense that sort of Lubitsch touch that I'm still trying to understand exactly what it is.
I don't know if I've seen that many of his movies, to be honest. But yeah, even just from this one, I can see that is the case. This was towards the one of his later movies that he made, and Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because the movie is set in Budapest for absolutely no reason at all.
Well, except that the play was Hungarian. I think
Yeah,
that's the main reason.
because they all speak English, and it doesn't
Yeah.
figure into the plot at all, and so it's just kind of funny. But yeah, I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it. It's definitely it has some weird parts that obviously they got rid of in that Nora Ephron didn't use for her adaptation. But yeah, I mean, just the whole suicide attempt. We'll talk more about all of those kind of things, but
Yeah.
there's definitely some darkness and some weird parts that make it really interesting, I think.
Should we go a little bit into the plot so that
Mhm.
we can start talking?
Yeah. So basically, this movie starts out with it's set in Budapest, and there's this department store, I guess, called Matacek and Company,
Hmm.
and Jimmy Stewart plays the manager, and he's worked there for 9 years, and he's hoping to get made an official partner of the store. And he's also been writing letters to this mysterious woman that wants to connect with somebody on an intellectual level, and so they haven't told each other their names or anything like that. And there's a girl named Clara, who is played by Margaret Sullivan, who kind of very smartly ends up getting a job at the store, and they don't like each other at all at first, but surprise, surprise, they're secretly writing each other these letters. And so,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So what do you think of this movie? Do you love it as much as I
Yeah.
do?
No, I really do enjoy it. Yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, it is one of those weird situations where I saw the remake when I saw You Got Mail first,
Hmm.
and where usually you see the original and then see the remake. And so it's and I think that You've Got Mail is a lot funnier because of Nora Ephron's script, but it's not that this doesn't have funny moments, but this is it just has those darker moments that You've Got Mail doesn't, which so it was kind of a little bit jarring when I first saw it. And But no, I really do enjoy it. And I I think that I don't know what you think, but it seems like to me, particularly anything to do with romance, uh, that I feel like people often treat it as light and fluffy and don't really give romantic comedies or romantic stories the respect that they necessarily deserve. And I'm not sure why that's the case, but do you feel that?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it has to do. Um, if I'm being honest, I think Nora Ephron does have a part to play. I feel like that time in the 90s in which we had so many romantic comedies, and
Hmm.
especially movies in which that build up to the couple getting together, and a lot of Nora Ephron movies sort of end when the relationship first starts for real.
Right. Yeah.
That it feels it. I guess it prevents the movies from really getting into the like in life, most relationships, the beginning of a relationship is so short compared to what comes after.
Mm,
So I think that's maybe why they feel like the movies are not as, I guess, profound or don't have that much to say or whatever, even though they can be very enjoyable, in my opinion, when
yeah.
done right.
Yeah, I've always liked that about you because I feel like you aren't snooty when it comes to enjoying a fun romantic comedy. Like I was like, "Oh, you like that? Yay!"
Yeah, definitely. Although I have to say about The Shove Around the Corner, um, um, wonderful movie. I love it. I feel like I saw it more as a workplace comedy than a
Uh-huh.
romantic comedy in a lot of ways. I
Yeah.
feel like the romantic scenes, they're pretty good, but I feel like it's not the main focus. I feel like Lubitsch is much more interested in sort of this the way that the shop works as a sort
Mhm.
of like a intermediate between family and business.
Mm.
It's a really interesting to me portrayal of what a like an ethical sort of humane version of business life
Yeah.
could be like. You have this like boss who is very humane, and obviously he has misunderstandings and a temper, and with his coworkers, but at the end of the day, I think it's kind of a matter of that like human understanding being so fundamental to the idea that these people can work together and make a living.
Yeah. I think that's true, because that is a difference between this and You've Got Mail,
You've got
because
mail.
You've
Yes.
Got Mail, they're competitors,
Mhm.
versus here they're colleagues.
Yeah, they're working the same time. And yeah, I'm glad you bring up You've Got Mail, because my least favorite part about You've Got Mail, like I said when we did that podcast, is the fact that the big conglomerate bookstore just like forces Meg Ryan to close her bookstore, and then the movie kind of forgets about that whole thing, and she just moves on, and then she
Mhm.
gets with Tom Hanks. But like, it was such an important part of her life, and then all of a sudden she's just over it. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's something that would not, that's something that Lubitsch would not be okay with. I feel like he
Mm.
really feels strongly that he's arguing for sort of like small, like
Mhm.
human oriented business, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting place. I mean, it's interesting, I thought, because I don't know if you've ever heard of the idea of the third place. Have you ever heard
Uh,
that sociological concept? It's there's
no.
there's this there's this sociologist named
Mhm.
Ray Oldenburg who wrote this great book where he said that everybody needs a third place. So you have your home, and then you have your work,
Mhm.
and then you have a third place, like a bookstore, a cafe, joining
Mm.
Shriners, or some kind of civic organization, a church, whatever kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And so this would be kind of an example of sort of that second place, in a way, of the work environment, and how uh, they have betrayal, they have loyalty, they have all the different dynamics that you typically have in a family, but it's in this work
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really, yeah, and I was really impressed with the way that the script and the direction and everything in the movie made such interesting. I feel like things that can be a little funny or like are part of the story, but do feel like something that it's really says something about the way humans interact with each other. I feel
Hmm.
like the fact that the boss, Mr. Matichek, thinks that it's Jimmy Stewart that's been sleeping with his wife instead of
Hmm.
Badash, and it feels in a way that he does it because Jimmy Stewart is the more complex, harder person to work with, right? Because he's always like contradicting him and speaking his mind, whereas
Yeah.
Badash is just like he's like a teacher's pet. So obviously, in a way, it feels like he wants to believe that it's Jimmy Stewart because it would be much easier to get rid of him because he
Yeah.
might be a good
That's
worker,
true.
but also he's a pain in the butt.
Right.
So, and I think that was, it's little things like that that made me really, really appreciate this movie.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I do love when he says, "I want your honest opinion," and then the Purovich guy, he's like
Yeah,
immediately walking away, like
yeah.
going upstairs
Oh,
or whatever.
oh my God, I love Pirovich. He was one of my favorite
Yeah,
characters.
he's really funny.
Hmm.
And
When he's talking about, yeah, that he just said goes along with whatever the boss says. The boss is always right. If he says I'm an idiot, I say yes, Mr. Matichik, I'm an idiot, but I am no fool.
well, I also like when Jimmy Stewart finds out that that she's gonna get him one of those
Oh yes, the
he's
music box.
like, oh no. It's like, I don't want to hear Ochichanya or whatever that is every day. That was funny. So there is that humor for sure,
Definitely.
that I do
Hmm.
enjoy.
Hmm.
And
And everything to do with the errand boy. peppy,
Yeah.
and him wanting to get promoted, and then he's bossing out the kid around the new
Right.
kid.
Yeah, he ends up what's that kid's name? He ends up
Rudy, yeah.
Yeah, Rudy.
Rudy, who another very touching moment when Mr. Matichek doesn't have anyone to spend
Yeah.
Christmas with, and then he ends up with Rudy. That was also very sweet.
Yeah. I also love love at the end when when he's like, Mr. Matthias Popkin, his you can never do better or whatever like that. Like, then I can't imagine any man. And then he keeps talking. He's like, he has no job. He's fat. He's like,
Yeah. Okay, so can we talk a little bit about that?
uh-huh.
Because I think, how do we feel? The one thing that I was wondering about is like, how do we feel about the way that Clara and Mr. Kralik, the two romantic leads,
Yeah.
treat each other? And especially the way that Mr. Kralik, and I guess this is also a question for You've Got Mail, once he finds out that Clara is his pen pal, and he chooses not to tell her.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that in theory is a very mean spirited problematic thing to do. I feel like for some reason I buy it in this movie. I'm not sure why I accept it so much, even though on the
Yeah.
face of it I would be like, oh, this is horrible what you're doing.
I
So
think
what
a
do you
lot
think?
of that comes down to casting, because I just think that we just like Jimmy Stewart and we just like Tom Hanks in both
Hmm.
cases. They're both so likable that you're like, okay, that's great. I don't know. I think it
Mhm.
helps a lot.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Stewart in particular. I think he I think he's really good at because when he's kind of in the date, right? When he shows up to the date and they're at the restaurant, and she doesn't know that he's her date,
Mhm.
and she starts basically she starts to insult him in some ways, right? And the way that he looks when she says these things about him, he looks so hurt, and he looks so like you can see in his he looks like a pup, like a little puppy almost,
Yeah.
that how could you say this to me in some ways, and I think that's how he gets away with it. He's just has that thing of like feeling so much like a good guy. I don't know.
Well, also she basically kind of apologizes in the letter. She's I was cold, I was mean, and I'm never like that. And so I think that um I don't know, maybe that encourages him. But I think the biggest thing comes down to you got to get that casting right of the guy, because you do have to kind of be rooting for him the whole time, even though he says some unlikable things. Or in here it's like he's critical of her shirt, critical of her some other things. And it is a classic trope of the
Hmm.
enemies to lovers storyline
Right.
too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like I'm really impressed the way he sells some of this stuff. Like even at the end, what you were talking about when he's talking about Pumpkin and how horrible he is and whatever, he does it in a way that it doesn't feel like he's being mean to her.
No.
It feels more like he's doesn't know what to do. Like he doesn't know how to reveal that it's him,
Yeah.
right? And he's just like he just has to keep going and going in a way, and until he's like, oh, doesn't have anywhere to go, so he just like
Yeah.
reveals
I also love it when he's like, "Oh, that's Victor Hugo. He stole that." That
it.
makes me laugh. But yeah, I think that I don't know. By then, we're just so invested in him and in her, and I mean, I think that this is probably a rare romantic comedy where I think that the male is really the lead in this film. Would you
Yeah,
agree?
I think it's yeah, I would say so. It's pretty balanced, but definitely he is feels like more of the lead of the story than Clara does.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think about this whole dynamic of Matichek? Do you feel like that's handled the whole idea of mental health and his he's trying to commit suicide and things. Do you feel like that is totally dissonant from the rest of the film, or how do you feel about that?
I think it's definitely a movie made at a time in which mental health was dealt in a different way, and there was not as much of a sensitivity to what goes into taking decisions such as, committing suicide and that sort of thing. So I do agree that it's taken uh, I guess in the bigger sense, it's taken a little, it's not taken as seriously, I guess, as we would want it to be taken nowadays. But I think on the specifics of the scene in which it happens, I feel like it's done very, very humanely and in a very respectful way, in a way, right? Because
Yeah.
I think it's not so much about the what do you call this? Like, it's not about I can't find the word, but it's not about the suicide itself, right? It's not about tantalizing, I guess, with us with like, is he going to kill himself or whatever? But it's more about Peppy preventing that, or like finding it, and like, it's about this sort of like family and relationship, human to human, right? Like the errand boy would prevent the boss from killing himself, and it and because he cares about him in a way, right? Not just because he wants to get a raise or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw it, I was really shocked. Wow, I was not expecting that in this light and fluffy movie, and sort of went to these darker places, and it maybe was a little bit tonally dissonant to me, but I've seen it a bunch of times since then, and it really had time to kind of admire it for going there, and for especially for the time, like you're saying. And I think that it's interesting because even throughout the movie, when you have Clara staying home from work because she's psychologically sick, and Jimmy Stewart says, oh well, then that'll be fine, right? Kind of brushes it off, and she says, well, it's true, we're in the same room, but we're not on the same planet. So that's an interesting kind of thing for a movie of this time period, to be like, no, this is worse than having a flu or something like that.
Yeah, and the way they use the word psychological also, I think, to me, it like sort of indicated the way that our understanding of that sort of thing has changed, right? Because I think she says, I can't remember the exact words, but she makes a distinction between things that are psychological and things that are physical and things that are of like the mind, and like things that maybe we wouldn't think of as so different nowadays, but they were back then.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so it's an interesting dynamic, and he ends up Mr. Matichek ends up in the hospital for 2 weeks, and I think, if I'm remembering right, that that his wife calls after he's had this breakdown. His wife calls the next day, and Jimmy Stewart's character basically has to tell her that he's in. I'm like, this is that he's in the hospital and stuff. I'm like, this is a broken marriage. This is problems, but but yeah, it's and then I do love the scene when he gets to finally fire Mr. Vadas, because that's a fun one for Jimmy Stewart. He does a good job with that one. It's like, get out of here.
Yeah, and that's the thing about him too. And even in that scene, you always feel like he's reluctant to be mean, but like he always justifies anything that his character does that could be construed as like, because I feel like in that scene he has such trouble getting to finally fire him because he just doesn't want to do that in a way. He doesn't want to be in that position, and then at the end he just feels like, okay, just get out of here, because like he just can't take it anymore, right? Similar with the other stuff he does. So I think you're right that it's all about him. I think it's a really impressive performance.
Yeah, he's Jimmy Stewart. If you had to pick, would you pick Cary Grant or Jimmy Stewart
to play me in a movie?
No, just your favorite of classic leads.
I don't know. It's hard to say. I have to say I haven't seen that many movies with the both of them, or like, so that I could. I mean, I love them both. How do you pick? But I do think in a way they're kind of like two. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say opposites, but like two different archetypes, right? Cary Grant is kind of like the like suave,
Yeah.
totally like gentleman, most coolest guy in the world. Well, Jimmy Stewart's more like everyman, right?
Yeah. I
It's like
guess,
almost like Clooney and Hanks nowadays, is how
yeah.
I see them.
I guess you could watch the Philadelphia Story and just enjoy both of them. Because they're both in that movie. But
Right.
yeah. So my friend Emma, that is a guest, a frequent guest on the Hallmarkies podcast, she loves this movie. It's a big tradition in her family. And so she has a little one, so she couldn't be on the podcast, but I asked her to write up a little summary of kind of why it means so much to her. And forgive, this is kind of a little bit long, but I thought it was really good, and I thought maybe we could talk about it a little bit. And she says, the shop around the corner is one of my family's biggest Christmas traditions. I'm telling you, the second I hear Ochachanya, my chest can barely contain my heart. Growing up, the Saturday after Thanksgiving, we decorate the house for Christmas, make beds on the floor, camp out in the living room with the newly decorated Christmas tree, and watch the shop around the corner. My dad would read the opening lines on the screen, and we'd say our favorite lines and giggle our way throughout the entire movie. That's what makes us so, quote, that's what makes us so feminine, unquote. And quote, what do you want? A homely girl? Or that got him. Draw your own conclusions. For 22 years of my life, no one I talked to had ever heard of the movie until I started dating my husband, and he hadn't just heard of it, he had seen it, and he loved it. Now each year at Christmas time, my husband and I watch it, and it's just pretty darn wonderful. The Shop Around the Corner is my top 3 favorite movies of all time, and I honestly don't think there's a Christmas movie that could ever top it. So I thought that was really sweet, the idea. And that's one thing that whenever you can tie a movie into Christmas, I think, or I guess a holiday, but Christmas is the big holiday, I think, as far as movies go. And it can have that kind of uh, become part of our lives, and then we
Mm.
watch it every year, and it's such in a way that I don't think that many movies can quite do, that we watch them on an annual basis. They really
Mm.
are something very important to us. I know. What do you think about that?
Um, Definitely. Now I'm wondering if I have anything quite like that. Um, I guess Christmas does feel particularly suited for that sort of thing. I think
Mm-hmm.
because, well, because of a number of things. I think from childhood I was a little bit conditioned that, like, Christmas specials would come around Christmas, and they're not shown any other time of the year because,
Yeah.
you know, it's, I mean, unlike some other people, maybe you, for example, a lot of people don't like spend the whole year watching Christmas movies.
Right.
Um, but um, but it was those things that felt a little special, like when Charlie Brown Christmas was gonna
Yeah.
be on, you would be like, oh, because it's Christmas time. These are the things that are seen at Christmas, right? It becomes a little bit. There's also the end of the year, and you're kind of like a little bit retrospective and thinking about family and the future and whatnot. So I think it is a particularly appropriate time to like sit down and reflect and sort of like
Yeah.
watch something inspirational or some.
It's true. I mean, with Charlie Brown Christmas, even just hearing the music, it kind of makes me feel relaxed and feel happy.
Mhm.
That I don't know, because I just have such warm memories of that movie. Also, Home Alone is one for me that has huge nostalgia. I mean, I love it, but it was the first movie that I ever really remember laughing really hard at
Mm.
as a kid. I went to see it when I was 9 with my grandparents, and I just thought it was the funniest movie I'd ever seen. and
Mm.
and I still love it. And I don't know. I do think there's something about setting those sort of tradition of something that you watch kind of every year, and it really takes you back to your childhood, and is something really special, and so I thought that was really cute, and that they would have this little sleepover kind of thing, and would sort of knew the lines. And I mean, it's a movie that covers some pretty tough stuff. So I think it's an interesting. I mean, Mimi in St. Louis is the same way. There's some tough scenes, some tough stuff in there, but it because of that Christmas association, I think it does make it a more. It makes those tough stuff go down a little bit easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and in a lot of those movies, I think it's also a little bit of the point to Christmas becomes this moment of family, of being able to overcome these things, right,
Yeah,
in the movie itself. So it feels like appropriate in a way.
that's a very good point. So yeah, I think we basically covered most of the elements of the movie, and it's really delightful, and I think all the performances are really good. I have to admit, it is a tiny bit distracting for me this to see, uh, because I so associate Frank Morgan with being the
The Wizard
wizard.
of Oz. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit unfair.
Yeah. He plays Mr. Matichek.
Yeah. Who's the man behind the curtain? You know, 'cause Wizard of Oz is one of my all-time favorite movies. So it's, I don't know, it's interesting, but there we go. So let's answer our questions we always do. So, where would you say that this film ranks on the Criterion scale of pretentiousness that we do?
Um, I gotta say, probably pretty low, right? Probably not very pretentious. I mean,
No.
it was created to be entertainment. It was created as a commercial film, and perhaps there's a little bit of, you know, just a little bit of a touch of like, because it's got so much attention to these things and it feels so well done. But even then, I feel like it would be really, really low in like,
Yeah.
in a 1 and a 2, when 1 is the least and 10 is the most pretentious.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I guess makes it a little bit maybe is that it does have some of those deeper, sort of maybe a little bit weirder elements that you wouldn't see in a lot of romantic comedies now. But yeah, still, I'd go like the very low pretentiousness scores. 0,
Definitely.
1, I don't know.
Hmm.
But and then also we say what makes this a Criterion film. Now this isn't in the Criterion Collection, but if it was, what would you
But it should
say?
be. But it absolutely should be. There are some Ernst Lubitsch movies in the Criterion Collection. I think To Be or Not to Be is most
Mm,
is, and at least I know that one for a fact is. I think Trouble in Paradise might be too, but this movie should definitely be in the collection, and because it's great, and
yeah.
also something that I'm really impressed by this movie is how well it moves and how, like, I feel like a lot of times with movies from the 30s and 40s, they can feel a little stagey, they can feel like the plot is not moving as fast as it does nowadays. And but I really think that this movie, while being a movie from the 40s and feeling like one, it also, like, it is so engaging and it moves so well from scene to scene, and it's so well done. I was so
Hmm.
impressed.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that it is just I think if the idea of the Criterion Collection is to showcase the best of genres, genre filmmaking, if that's included, then why not have some romantic comedies in there?
Definitely.
You know?
And yeah, and if you're going to have romantic comedies, then this should definitely be in. It's one of the best ones I've ever
Yeah,
seen.
yeah, really good. So there we go. That is the shop around the corner. And of course, in You've Got Mail, they named the bookstore off of name it the shop around the corner. So
Right.
and it really does, I think you can tell a lot, because I mean, it was such a legacy of imitators, that that if it wasn't good, people wouldn't want to keep copying it too.
Right.
So I mean, I still like You've Got Mail the best, just because I love Nora Ephron's writing so much. I think her movie is just so quotable and so funny to me. But it's hard because I saw the before seeing this, but I love them both, so
Mm-hmm.
I can enjoy both. So you are picking our next choice for January,
Yeah.
first one of the new year.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Very exciting.
tell us about it.
The first one of the new decade, not
Yeah,
only the new
true.
year.
This is exciting.
Yeah, so probably around the time in which their next episode drops is around the time of Oscar nominations. They're gonna come out,
Yeah.
and very expected to do really well in a somewhat surprising way is the movie Parasite, which would become the first South Korean movie to be nominated for Best Foreign Language Film and Best Picture, probably. We're crossing our fingers because we're both fans of that movie.
Mhm.
So I thought we should do a South Korean movie, and I found the movie The Housemaid on Criterion Channel, which is not only a movie that a lot of people have sort of cited as an influence for Parasite, but also considered one of the best Korean films of all time. It's kind of like a Korean classic. So I'm really excited to go into this movie, which I've never seen before. But I do love Parasite, and I'm really interesting to see sort of the influences and
Mhm.
where it comes from.
Yeah, I never heard of it, so that'll be really fun to try something new. And I agree with you about Parasite. I think it's just about a perfect movie.
Mhm.
There's very little flaws to it, in my opinion. So
Yeah, it is so entertaining too. So if someone's
yeah,
listening to this and has not seen Paris, I definitely recommend. I
yeah.
feel like it's an arty movie, but it's also an incredibly
Mhm.
fun and accessible movie.
Yeah, that's why I said in my review that I really felt like it's a great gateway to our house film if you're looking to kind of introduce somebody. And I think people have a misconception that it's a darker horror movie than it actually really is. It's actually quite funny. And my friend, I mean, I'm not that big of a horror fan. I'm pretty big wimp, but my friend Jen never watches horror movies at all,
Mm-hmm.
and she loved it. It's her favorite movie. She goes to
Yeah.
almost all the screenings with me. It's her
Mhm.
favorite movie that she's seen all year.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't met someone who's seen it and hasn't liked it. So
Yeah,
definitely, it's very, very exciting.
yeah.
And it's
So
very exciting to see a foreign movie that seems like it's going to do so well with awards and
yeah,
Oscars and stuff. So
yeah.
I'm really excited
I'm
about
trying to
that.
think. It's been a long time since a.
Well, we had Roma last year, which
Oh
came
yeah, you're right.
close.
Duh. Yeah,
Yeah, but this, I feel like this might actually pull it off, pull the best picture, maybe. I
yeah.
don't
I
know.
hope
Maybe I'm
so.
just a dreamer, but I think there's a chance.
Yeah, yeah, definitely for sure. Well, let us know what you think of the Shop Around the Corner or any of its remakes or whatever. Let us know in the comments or on Twitter. We'd love to talk about it. And we can be found at Criterion Pod. And so I'll try to post some different things about this movie and, like I said, the remakes and the other things on the Twitter. So make sure you're following us there. And Conrado, where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter at Coco Hits New York. I also have a blog, cocohitsny.wordpress.com. I haven't posted there in a while, but I will be posting a best of 2019 list if people are interested in that. That is coming soon, and I can promise that it is because I've written most of it already. So
Oh, very good. I look forward to that always. Yeah, so you can find me at Rachel's Reviews all over social media and iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes, where you can read my glowing review of both Rise of Skywalker and Cats. Just
Woo.
kidding. They were marginal reviews of both. But check it out. And I will be also doing tons of lists in January and end of December. And so you definitely want to follow me and check it out. And so yeah, this is really fun. And also, yeah, make sure you're listening to the Hallmarkies podcast. We have a ton of fun on that podcast. So yeah, it was fun to just totally agree on a movie.
It was.
It was good. So all right, well, yeah, let us all know what you think, and thanks, and we will be talking in the new year. So have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's time.
You too. The memories were lost long ago, but at least you have beautiful ghosts.
That's right. All right. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.